Заходите. Ну, давайте начнем.
Okay, let's start. Today we have two time slots which were merged together. We will have our panel discussion. And at the beginning of this panel discussion, Igor Zhukov will make a speech. And following his speech, we will have a discussion and we'll discuss other issues as well. So the name of this panel discussion, PostgreSQL and Technological Independence of Russia. I would like to highlight that import substitution topic is a sort of buzzword which can be interpreted in different ways. And in order to think clearer, we think that technological independence is a better way to put it. So this panel discussion will be about technological independence. There is no need to substitute imports in itself. Our main target is technological independence. So I give the floor to Mr. Zhukov. And I will express my opinion on import substitution as well, because import substitution term has some sort of political connotation. And the term technological independence is a way more comprehensible, and for every user it means that he or she will be free to choose from different solutions and to choose the optimal solutions for him or her. And let's look back into the history of the Russian Federation. Let's begin from the year 1998. And at the Ministry of Defense, a technical and military council was held, and this council has set up a task for technological independence in terms of hardware and in terms of software. And the main goals at the time were the following: to ensure technological independence of IT security systems. And such goal was set due to the fact that we need to comply with rules and regulations. And as per these rules and regulations, we need to provide not only source codes, but also we need to highlight what mechanisms specifically will ensure safety and security. Also, we needed to reduce the number of nomenclature, and we also had to analyze the specific platforms. In year around 2000, we have made a comprehensive analysis of security systems, and in the automated systems, 63 OSs were used and 45 DBMSs were used. And these figures do not seem to be trustworthy. And when this analysis was made, did not make proper account for versions MS-DOS, NT, Windows, and so on and so forth. And also took into account SM, PDP, Luxus, the so-called Soviet heritage. And it was truly so. The figures are correct. And the tasks were introduced, and Jean-Paul has described the experience of the French government without rules and procedures, without norms, without administrative support. It is impossible to mitigate these issues, and it was impossible to do so 15 years ago. Today it is just hard to do so. And we were faced with a task, and Linux and Postgres have advantages. They have advantages because they are compatible with many hardware platforms. Linux and Postgres are compatible with Intel, and they are compatible with Spark. They are compatible with mainframes. They are compatible with Elbrus, Russian-made hardware. And back then, so the main chunk of efforts was to was for developers to ensure the implementation of different security mechanisms, to ensure the proper functioning of distributives which were available at the given platforms, followed by a certification. This was a rather time-consuming, painful process. It required a lot of effort. Basically, we needed to gather teams up from scratch, teams of developers, and these were multi-directional teams which were working with different areas of business. We needed support services, and these teams were working with many enterprises. And the first implementation of crypto mechanisms has taken place. Encryption mechanisms, I mean. And let's talk about the propagation of databases. So the first issue was how to port inherited applications from Windows to the new systems. So first of all, we had to tackle work with different tools, and Linux infrastructure and Postgres infrastructure was not yet well developed. It was underdeveloped. Here you see slides which were compiled 10 or 15 years ago. However, you know, every effort will lead you to some kind of result. And a trend appeared, and the sets of tools were reduced, and Linux and other platforms become more frequent, and a community started to form. And the effort of hundreds of enterprises is a very important thing. A lot of specialists have joined this effort. They were working not only within the closed defense market, and every enterprise in its own region tries to broaden its vision, and a sort of ecosystem started to emerge. I would like to mention some of political things, and we cannot avoid political things truly, and some success was attained due to the fact that the 2 presidential decrees were signed, and as per these decrees, the government of the Russian Federation was ready to switch to free software. So the entities of executive power are willing to switch to free software, and such documents were already drafted in the Russian Federation back then in 2002. And it is not by chance that I asked Jean-Paul whether he faced some difficulties related to proprietary companies. And at that time, Microsoft has organized the government security program, and Russia was the first country to receive access to to source codes of Microsoft. And let's look now at collocations such as technological independence and import substitution. So what is independence? Are you independent if you get a source code from a vendor? This is my message number 1. And this issue is very interesting. Let's look at IBM, the so-called Blue Giant. They had their own R&D center in Moscow. However, I don't know why. Maybe it was political, maybe it was not for political reasons. This R&D center was recently closed down. So I think that the collocation import substitution is in some sort of political environment, and it relates not only to technology, it relates to other things as well. So in several speeches it was already mentioned that a community of developers emerged, And a number of companies launched the development of Linux platform, of Postgres platform. They went through the certification process, and they were certified by the Ministry of Defense. They were certified by the Federal Security Service, and they were certified as well by other state entities. And then this community reached a new stage. They needed to make a leap forward to a new level. So when we're talking about big government bodies, they needed to cooperate on international level, and they needed to cooperate at a higher level. And I would like to show you this slide, which shows some particular features related to special purpose systems. Such systems have special requirements towards failure, towards reliability, and testing of different bundles happens under higher load, so to say. So forming and training people, training of people was done not only within the enterprises. So our effort has generated 2 training programs in 2 universities. And it is not by happenstance that via universities we managed to get closer to Postgres community, and they want to make Postgres a mainstream DBMS. And the company Postgres Professional, which was born today, the Director General of this company graduated from our university, and he wrote his paper in our university, and today he started this company, Postgres Professional. And he learned how to develop documentation, he learned how to prepare guidelines, manuals in our university. So this effort, unfortunately, without any support, becomes really painful, really hard, and we need to consolidate our efforts. It was mentioned today as well, because we are all benefiting from the results. It means that everyone shall make simple or at least small contribution. And the Minister of Telecommunications and Mass Media has attended our conference. It is a good sign. It will help us to gather this critical mass, to give an impetus to all these processes, and these processes will see greater regulations imposed. All these concerted effort has led to the following, and we can witness it here today. We have a critical mass in order to attain a new quality level. And on this slide, I wanted to express my personal opinion, and I'm showing this, so to say, 3 development stages. I call them levels. So first level was intra-ministerial level. Every ministry was working on its own. Specialists from different ministries were not interacting. By the year 2010, some inter-ministerial systems emerged, and these systems were developed owing to Postgres. And today we see federal systems emerging. And one of the keynote speakers, Andrei Borisov, one of the active members of this development, is here today with us. And I would like to talk not only about the national level, I also would like to talk about, so to say, communication level. Today we have a great conference with many prominent speakers, with many leading developers from all around the world, And it means that the critical mass is already achieved, and Oleg's call, give us a chance. Give us a chance to build a system for Postgres development, and the Russian Federation has reached its logical conclusion, and that is why at this moment I would like to close my opening remarks, and I would like to invite the panelists. So we have 3 sofas here. Distinguished colleagues, please be seated. You see your name tags here. And now I would like to say a couple of words about, what issues we would like to discuss first together with the panel. So, technological independency. So, is the use of open software and the use of Postgres in particular, because we're talking about Postgres today, is this a prerequisite to ensure technological independency?
Well, or are these things that are not interrelated? I don't know. Vladimir, what do you think? Well, actually, by itself, the requirement of open source code cannot be a prerequisite for technological independence. I believe that the formulation of criteria should be more direct. What I'm calling the technological triad of ensuring independence, so it requires 3 components. And it can pertain to a country or an organization. If we want to ensure the software independence of a country or of a company, we should have full source codes. Second, development infrastructure, that is to say, tools that allow us to do something with the codes. And third, the infrastructure itself, the capacities that can build it. And of course, the real local infrastructure, the heads, the brains. So these 3 parameters, these 3 conditions can be provided either by creating the code from scratch by local specialists, and by the way, in Russia there are examples of products that without open source from scratch developed full Russian decisions that are successful. This is one way. But on the other hand, we can also take open source solutions, deploy the local infrastructure of developing them inside the country, and build local expertise in order to transform what we import from the open source code into solutions that are targeted to the Russian market. Yes, and we also should ensure good quality throughout the process. Igor, did you want to add something? I will help you moderate. 1.5 months ago, we had a forum on the same topic, and an opinion was voiced that an element of technological independence is, for example, Postgres SQL, and it shows that the approach should be bilateral. The Russian community is using the experience of the world, and the world should also receive from the Russian community something as well. That's what is happening today. In such a case, even if there are sanctions or political decisions and political difficulties, it will not hinder the infrastructure support. I agree with your idea, and of course, it is necessary to cooperate with the world community. We shouldn't just take the code and confine ourselves in our country. Any isolationism is a road to nowhere. Did you want to add something? I wanted to add that in the USSR we had such an experience. We took some experience from Europe and we tried to develop it ourselves. And finally it basically failed and we had to switch to biframe IBM. Mark, did you want to add something? Well, actually I'm here is a person who represents the enemy you all want to fight. I represent a Western company that has been mentioned today a lot of times, and I have my opinion on this topic. So, safety of the state and security is very important. We need to ensure it. And there are several approaches to it. The approach that was chosen is not the optimal one, as I believe. When we want to protect ourselves, when we want to choose software, we usually weigh risks. Sometimes there are a lot of important risks. There are political risks, for example. And today, the political risks are overshadowing the rest. Besides, there are technological, financial, business risks, and so on. And now, for some reason, we have forgotten about the rest, and we believe that we just need to have something of our own. It is a good approach, but taking into account the current environment, people are starting to say, let's throw out everything Western that we have. Our technologies are much better, and that's what I've heard many times today. And if a person doesn't know anything about DBMSs, if he's a businessman or an official, if he listens to you, he will have the impression that everything is perfect, very fast, very safe. So why paying huge money that cost as much as an infrastructure project? But before this event, I have looked some information. I'm not a Postgres specialist. I had my idea of it. And today's event has shown me that the situation is worse than I expected. I will be basing on Oracle because I know it a bit better. People are selecting a database, and there is a limited number of criteria according to which it is assessed. It is performance, security, scalability, controllability, support level, big data, and so on. And price, and cost of ownership. Yes, of course, the price too. Sorry. Sure. We shouldn't speak about the price, but the cost of ownership. It is correct. I want to say that, unfortunately, on all these points so far, there are a lot of things we need to work on in terms of reliability, in terms of big data. I will just give one example, just to illustrate my idea. People are saying that everything is better, but it's not. Let's take performance. Usually I say the following. There are people here who are planning to further develop and who are choosing the direction of development, and they're looking at what is happening in the world. I believe that in DBMS world, there is a real revolution of system performance over the last few years. Usually I say that there is the past, the present and the future that will begin in 2015. Having listened to what has been said today, I understand that we don't only have yesterday, but the time before yesterday. I've heard a lot of speeches of people who talked about the enhancing performance. There are code reserves, and Oracle has also been working with it a lot. But the code reserves, in terms of raising performance, belongs to the past. These are database machines and special hardware, special architecture on which the same databases, the same proprietary applications are working faster. I'm not going to speak about figures. People say different figures, but it is in the past already. And if we take this past and add tunings, of course it raises performance. But we are in the present today, and we work today with memory technologies. You have probably heard of HANA or Oracle memory, and without rewriting the application, we can leverage the big memory features such as column storage, the use of vector processes, and join operations, vector operations. There are a lot of things there, and people have not been speaking about it today, but it's what happens in present, and it will also allow to increase performance. So tomorrow, now my guys are testing what we are going to have tomorrow. Tomorrow we will have CPUs with DBMS commands. And this is a CPM process, and soon it will be released. You understand, if the database commands in the CPUs will also allow it to enhance performance. And what does it all give? These are not just words. But when you get results 1,000 times faster, it changes business, it changes the approach to analysis and so on. I'm not going to dwell on that. I just wanted to say that the technological independence is doing something that is better, or at least not worse, than the thing that we are replacing. We need then to produce computers, CPUs, good DBMSs, and if we take the open source code as a basis, we need to develop it until this level. And there is a long way to go, according to what I've heard today. This is the first point. And the second point is that the approach is incorrect. There are instruments that are used to build the system, and there is the system. If we are for example, making pits, we can use a shovel or we can use huge machines. And if the machines, if we don't have machines anymore, we will have to use a shovel. But it is a mistake just to use a shovel if the machines are available. Yes, we will dig this pit, but instead of building a city, we will just build one building. So we need to use the tools that allow us to achieve the maximum performance sustainable. If we are speaking about independence, of course we need to have a plan B. And I believe that this plan B should not be about urgently making people replace the performant, safe and secure systems by open source systems. Sometimes it is justified. I highly respect Postgres community. You're real enthusiasts, you are doing a very good job, and there are a lot of systems where the open source code is preferable. I do not argue with that, but there are niches, systems with tens of thousands of users, hundreds of thousands of terabytes, and people are trying to use open code there, saying that it is a panacea against everything. I don't think it's correct. The plan B should not be about replacing all good things by what is currently available, but about building a technology of developing applications, because DBMSs are used to build applications. So we need to use it to build applications that will not be very much dependent on the DBMS. That's what 1C is doing. So if you don't have any limitations and if you have high requirements in terms of safety and reliability, and if you are using Oracle, it's okay. But if something happens, you have a plan B and you will be able to survive. That's the first direction that should develop. And the second direction that should develop, it is fast and simple migration. If we are speaking about specific DBMSs, I've heard the following today. People are saying, let's give up Oracle and Microsoft, let's migrate to Postgres. We allowed to ensure good migration, but then they added that it wasn't exactly Postgres, not exactly Russian, and not exactly free of charge. So why all that? To migrate from Oracle to Enterprise DB? This would be strange. So, as far as I understand, the ministry will allocate now a lot of money, and we will have to organize a company to develop all that. Guys have a lot of good ideas and a lot of good algorithms, but I know that in our headquarters we have tens of thousands of developers who are doing that. So, how much money is our government ready to allocate? Now there are 1,000 persons who are working with Postgres, as I have read. So I would propose to look at that in a slightly different way. I don't think that we need to close all doors and to develop only our system. Money will not will not come always. Money will end. And I also have a complaint about IBM, not only about Postgres. I've been to IBM laboratories. All we are doing is catching up. I asked them what they are developing, and basically they are catching up with what already exists. Are they producing anything that Oracle or Microsoft or Postgres don't have? For example, enhancing reliability or performance a good deal. If Russia always implements something that has already been implemented 5 years ago by a vendor, I don't understand how we will be able to compete. Thank you.
Сейчас я передам вам слово.
Oleg, I will give you the floor in a couple of seconds. I would like to make several comments. Of course, we have several tasks which are not suitable for PostgreSQL as of today. Of course, you can have such doubts. But however, we have multilateral tasks, we have multilateral choice criteria, and when we look at specific user cases, sometimes Postgres is more viable, more interesting. For instance, because the criteria are as such and the task is as such. Of course, there are other tasks and other criteria. I would like to say one word about the tasks, because, you know, I'm not a coder myself, but I see some tasks when Postgres is preferable. When you have several developers, when they need open code, when the system is not very sophisticated, when there is no need for a lot of money, when security and reliability is not required, no one asks you to use foreign-made systems. But I'm against the following. You know, we have high-load processes, we have very sophisticated state systems. They are not ready right now for open source as yet. Oleg, the floor is yours. So what can I say? When I opened this conference, I have already said that I'm against this collocation import substitution. Oleg joined us a little bit later on, so we said that we will talk about technological independency. But you know, I'm for freedom. I'm for the freedom of choice. The freedom of choice means that a client needs to have a possibility to choose something from Oracle, something from Postgres. But the situation in IRL is as follows. You've seen this figure. 70% of the database market in the Russian Federation is Oracle. IBM, MySQL, they have, small pieces of this market, and open source DBMS less than 1%. So where is the freedom of choice here? There is none. Initially, of course, we can learn a lot of things from Oracle, and lots of our developers have Oracle background, and Postgres is the closest DBMS to Oracle ever, and Postgres is aimed at reliability, is aimed at data consistency, data security, data integrity, first of all. What I dislike in Oracle, and what I dislike in your previous comment, what I dislike in it. First of all, appliances are in Postgres. Fujitsu has been offering for several years Postgres appliance with huge bandwidths and with huge terabytes inside, and so on and so forth. Fujitsu has already offered this even before Oracle did. So people are working in this area of business. Japanese companies such as NTT, they have a Postgres laboratory, and it is a fully commercial company. I do not even think that their loads are lower. Or, for instance, pension funds in France, they are operating 24/7, 365 days a year, and they have significant loads. But the population of France is lower than the population of Russia. Yeah, maybe several times lower. But you're saying that we need to look ahead. If you are thinking that we are not looking ahead, you are wrong, and deeply so, because things which we are working right now on, if they are not even in Oracle. And Oracle users, what do they say? They say, oh, we do not have unstructured data, we do not have JSON. But we do. Oracle has promised to introduce it, but we have this. We have innovations, and it is not by happenstance that Enterprise DB is mentioned as leaders of the industry together with Oracle. And 64 companies out of Fortune 500 are using Postgres. These are not mere words. Or 111 companies from Forbes lists are using Postgres. And Postgres is suitable for some applications. And Yandex 2 months has announced that they will switch Yandex Mail to Postgres, and they has already launched the migration to Postgres. No one made them do so. I never went to their office, and I was not talking about import substitution or independence. But you see, here in the audience, you are hard Postgres fans, but ordinary people, they have another opinion maybe. But if we will sit on our hands, we will achieve nothing. In Russia, Oracle had the following stance all the time. 14 years ago, Oracle representatives came to my office, or 15 years ago, and they've said to me, okay, you are doing Rambler. I think that Rambler needs Oracle. It is the biggest portal in Russia, so they need Oracle. They were offering lots of things to me. You know what they were offering to me? They offered me, all the cheese of China, and the Postgres version was back then 6.3 or 6.5 even. But however, we've managed to complete this Rambler project, and we had a server which was 500 megahertz with 8 gigabytes of RAM, and we were able to work with millions of unique queries per day. The issue with Postgres is that there is no vendor in the Russian Federation. You want me to become a CEO? No, I don't want to be a CEO. I want to code, you know. Yeah, it will be the next topic for our discussion. I just want to say that we specifically embarked on this way in order to ensure vendor support of Postgres and in order to develop this market. Second quadrant in Europe, in the European Union, Enterprise DB in USA, in Canada, they are vendors of Postgres. And thanks to these two companies, the enterprise use of Postgres has emerged, and there is a new company right now emerging in the Russian Federation. This is a huge market, and representatives of all the companies attended this conference despite all the political hardships, and they understand that people who stay friends with us today will stay friends with us forever. You know, this mess will end one day. This political mess, I mean. And in my opinion, we will be able to be co-competitors in Postgres project, and we'll have not 3 people cooperating, but 15 people. And these will be high-level people. Right now we are hiring students, and they are making their prototypes within our project. And this is another topic for our discussion. Oleg, you want to touch upon all the topics right away? Okay, I will close out my comments in the following way. Comparing us to Oracle today, you know, it is impossible. We have different stances, but we have made the first step. We declared ourselves as a vendor. In 1 year or 2 years, we will be able to compare our company and Oracle. But right now, you know, what is Postgres? It is a DBMS, open source DBMS, without a professional support. And on the other side, you have professional ecosystem with all the required infrastructure. And we have made already the first step. And the government of the Russian Federation has sent the message that they understand us. And we hope that, you know, we will not perish, we will not vanish, and we will make our efforts viable. Right now we are negotiating with the biggest integrators, we are negotiating with the biggest banks, and they are not just want to switch to Postgres, to migrate to Postgres. They have already tried Postgres. What is good in Oracle statistics? So if you are in a database, you can know how many users of Oracle are in the world, but there are many users of Postgres which are not declaring that. ITEC in Sochi did this, Sports.ru did this, and ITEC said to me that we were issuing passports in Sochi thanks to this service. The Central Federal Customs Service, they have installed already Postgres, and they said that the performance, like comparing to Oracle, is only just 1.5. And these are just the first steps. But user cases are emerging, and we are offering an alternative solution to people. And you know, we shall not wait until the weather will be bad. We need to fix our roof when the sun is shining. And what you've said, it's loud and clear. It's loud and clear. It's loud and clear for developers. And you know, we've been talking with oil people, and we looked at their codes. We need to, you know, rework this code at 100%. And they left us thinking about how much money they need to invest into restoring this code. And then we talked with Android people, and they were like very clever guys. Everything is application support, everything is fine with them. And you know, programming culture, having the right code, that is another topic. And in my letter to you, I've said the following. I've said that I'm not against Oracle. I'm ready to learn from Oracle. And 2 years ago, we have implemented KNN method. I'll remember this discussion. Then I've made an investigation whether this feature is in Oracle. You gave me your developer, and we looked at this together. Then Then I looked at Oracle forums and people saying that they are not using Oracle feature, they're using crutches. And the speed boost was, in tens of thousands. And I really like when I see people uploading to me during conferences. When I say that I have sped up the systems by tens of times, by tens of thousands of times. So let's give the floor to Vladimir Zakharov, the representative of Lanit company. This company is one of the biggest systems integrators, and they are using Oracle and they're using Postgres as well. Vladimir, Lanit company, and I'm working in Lanit's team, which works with federal authorities, with state authorities, and we have solutions on Oracle and we have solutions on Postgres, and I will follow suit and I will support our previous speakers. So if you need a shovel, there is no need for you to buy an excavator. There is no need to use a golden sledgehammer. We made a comparison between Oracle and Postgres, and we made a choice of Postgres. Off mic, sorry. I'm not a developer myself. I'm a business person. Postgres. Please pronounce it correctly. It's Postgres or PostgreSQL. Before I was working in a ministry, and the DBMS there was an in-house made DBMS. They have spent 20 years on writing this DBMS. The performance was on par with our expectations. And we know that Oracle is dominating the market, and there are other markets on the player who are emerging on the market, like Tmax. They have a rather aggressive policy to conquer the market, and Postgres as well. But right now, Postgres makes the biggest chunk of our project. And we have invested resources into this, and we've switched to Postgres, we've switched our solutions to Postgres. And if I am to talk about technological independence, this is the first step we need to make. We need to offer choice to our clients. We need to offer several solutions. A solution on Oracle, which is suitable for several tasks, which may perform better than Postgres. I'm not a technical person myself, so correct me if I'm wrong. But for some tasks, there is no need to install Oracle. It is too expensive. There is no need to pay for license fees. There is no need to pay for support fees. I think that the market shall define the environment, and we need all the systems present. I have a question to Mark. IBM did not conceal that a huge chunk of code was copied and pasted from Postgres. And I have a question to Oracle. Do you do the same? Do you use Oracle strings? Or do you use Postgres strings? IBM acknowledged that. Oh, I've never heard that from IBM. Maybe you know other people from IBM than I do. Oracle has parts of codes of RDB, if you remember this DBMS, and we have people who are working with this DBMS, and this DBMS was bought by Oracle, and it comprised good algorithms. And if you are talking about Postgres strings in Oracle, no. And Oleg can mention lots of DBMS, and everyone is forgetting about very secure systems such as Linter. Yes, Linter was mentioned during this section. But you know, all the people are talking only about Oracle in negative way and about Postgres in positive way. And we are cooperating with Linter, and they are providing lots of interesting ideas. There are Firebird and MongoDB. There are lots of other databases, but we are not copying chunks from other databases. And Tibera DBMS was mentioned, and it is a freaking out crazy system because they have copied the whole user interface. I think that, you know, they have a copyright and there are certain rules. And did Oracle file a suit? Oracle can file a suit. And I have analyzed this DBMS, and we made a comparison. And we thought, first of all, that they have copied Oracle 10 in its entirety. They have copied even file names, processes names. Those who are aware of Oracle guidelines can look into this and see that it is the same. And in my opinion, we have decided they refactored a little bit the code because they are running into lots of issues related to implementation, but they have copied API, interface, comments from our guidelines, from our rule books.
So I cannot answer your question, but I doubt it seriously, because there are tens of thousands of people who are working on this code. I have worked with a team who works with testing, manageability, enterprise management. Of course, they are not using anything. I saw them working. As for the core, you remember when our core appeared, Postgres did not exist back then. It was in the 70s. There was Ingress, Formix, and others, but not Postgres. You know, Mike Stonebreaker is a scientist entrepreneur. He commercialized things from Postgres. Illustri emerged. Illustri purchased Informix. Informix bought DB2. And why all that happened? It all happened because of DataBlade, the expandability mechanism contained in Postgres. This is the mechanism Russia is now working on. The interpreter cannot hear the speaker as he is not using the mic. We have rewritten everything. We did 3 expansion systems that are working, and we are continuing working on that. And I understand that there is a reliability hole. The user can write his extension that may then influence WAL logs. In Postgres, we used different solutions. We prohibited the extensions that require WAL logs. So you cannot now write your access methods. You can write data types or indexes, but not whole access methods. Now, speaking about technological independence and what Simon Riggs mentioned, that we need to build things faster, we need extendability. Speaking about the speed of development, each year a new version comes and it has some minor changes. Personally, I don't think it is a right thing to do. We have releases once per 2 or 4 years, but there are about 500 or 600 new possibilities, and most of them are really fundamental things, not rewriting algorithm. For example, the memory, multi-tenant, the possibility to work with multiple bases as with one whole, and also the possibility to track the temperature of logs. So these are big things. And each time migration from version to version is something difficult. You are speaking about migrating from vendor to vendor, but even if we are speaking about migration from version to version, it is already a problem, not in terms of functioning, but in terms of plans, in terms of the lack of use of some possibilities. So if each year there is a release with minor changes, maybe it is a correct approach if we speak about catching up and overtaking, but in terms of commercial reliability, I have doubts. Today there was a report on documentation, and I liked the feature about counting pages. And in nearly 3,000 pages, there is 1/4 that is dedicated to release notes. I think that Postgres is developing very quickly right now. I have another remark to what Mark has mentioned. It is clear that IBM and Oracle, as we discussed yesterday or the day before yesterday, they have hardware support from within. Oracle purchased Sun, IBM had everything from the very beginning, and hardware support for software solutions is actually the advantage that, in my opinion, is temporary. Everything is developing as a spiral. Today, of course, it is a competitive advantage. But for example, if we take DPI, you know, deep packet inspection, it is a network technology that allows to manipulate the bandwidth depending on the type of service that requires channel resources. This feature appeared for mobile networks. DPI was used to solve the problem of mobile networks. When it started to developing fast, people started developing special processes that used the solutions that they introduced into firmware. And the development of DPI stopped because the design and manufacturing of CPUs is the process that takes much more time than software development. And it started finally developing when people started applying a new family of blight servers, non-specialized servers, rather standard ones, that were produced by IBM, among others. And finally, development restarted again, because at the new stage of development, CPUs developed good performance, and they could digest the code that before required special CPUs. So maybe now again, at the next stage of development, the type CPUs will digest what the DBMS is doing as quickly as it is now done by specialized CPUs. And maybe in future we will not require such specialized CPUs. Yes, I fully agree with you. It is actually already happening. But let's divide the two groups of algorithms. The common algorithms are already implemented not only in Spark processes. For example, there are common algorithms of compression, decompression, or coding, and one day they will indeed be embedded, because it is a common thing for everything, not only for DBMSs, but there are some mechanisms proper only to DBMSs that require special algorithms. For example, select operator, star asterisk operator, it all is done in silicon. I understand that SQL is something common, but I doubt that special CPUs will be produced that will be targeted only to that. We will see how it will develop. You want to make a comment? Boris from Rusbitech. I would like to specify one term. At first you said open source and technological independence. I think that we also should speak about information security, and I think that open source is good in terms of information security above all, because it allows to look at the code and certify it. As a company that works with protected codes, we have no problem in certifying Postgres, but I don't know how to do it with Oracle. Oracle also gives open source. This is the first point. Then, speaking about information security. A couple of years ago, there was a flood in Thailand, and there was a plant that was flooded, and that plant produced 80% of the world Winchesters, and suddenly the whole world was deprived of these hard disks. So we have globalization, and we face technological hazard. Instead of Oracle, there could be Microsoft, and we would have a discussion between Postgres and Microsoft. But the thing is that we need to have many players. And another point, we are speaking about technological independence. Each year, Russian students are winning the programming competitions, but there are a couple of well-known Russian programmers in the world. Where are all these talented guys? I will explain what is happening. There are ministries that are paying billions to Oracle for their licenses. Finally, we have the Postgres development. I think that Postgres development and developing Postgres company is above all about saving the country's resources. It will hire our talented students and guys that will develop it all, and it is very good in terms of cost effectiveness for the whole country. Thank you, Andrei. I will give a short answer. There are two ideas I do not agree with. The first idea is that there is one monster, and if something happens to it, the world will be deprived of everything. I welcome diversion, I welcome the creation of the company, and I welcome the investment into it and its hiring specialists. But there are a lot of examples when we have a small firm and people start to rely on it, and there is a high probability that one day it will cease its existence. This probability is much higher than in case of Oracle or Microsoft or IBM. There is low probability that Oracle will die, but we know the case when the company Sberbank was using disappeared, and now and they had to migrate to a different system. As for our guys who are participating in the programming competitions, there are a lot of talented guys, but nothing works out. I have my idea on that. I've been working in IT for a long time. We have had the same problem. We have a lot of genius ideas, but we are not managing to implement it. We managed to develop nuclear industry and space industry. Oleg now is facing the huge challenge. I saw, for example, how support in Oracle is built. I'm not even speaking about the number of people, but it's a huge machine, a huge mechanism with a lot of stages of control, a lot of subsystems. And in our current environment, he has to build a similar system. If he manages to do that, he will deserve a monument. Technological independence is not only related to Oracle. Oracle has R&D centers in the US, and it would be good to have such centers in Moscow or St. Petersburg or a different town. As for Java, everything is developed at our headquarters, and here everything is good. Well, I wanted also to add something. One of these days, it has been mentioned that already in Russia there is a number of organizations whom Oracle refused support. Oracle said, guys, we need to respect the instructions of the company we are of the country we are incorporated in, and we need to apply sanctions. And there are specific companies that suffer from such activities by Oracle. So what will they do? And even a colleague called me from a Russian company and told me that they face such a problem. Now, can you speak about vendors? Oleg, could you please speak about it more in detail? Well, I will say, what are the plans? How are you going to develop? How the others could join you? Could you please tell about how it will be put into practice. Over the last few years, public civil servants have been approaching me and telling me, when are you going to start the company? They told me, you're a well-known person, you need money, we will give you money. And they have been saying it to me a lot of times, but I'm not a businessman. I told them, give me a good businessman who will help me.
And they were failing to find such a person. I don't know why. And during the last 6 months, one time a week, I was meeting with ABBY, with Zyteco, Lanit, no, not Lanit. God forbid I did not went to their office. Why not God forbid? Because they went to my office later on. And we had, great discussions. We were sitting at different restaurants, we were drinking teas, we were exchanging emails. And all the times, these discussions were driven astray. Businessmen were understanding that they will fail to commit and they will fail to bring it about. They were talking like, no, it is not on my scale. We cannot do this. You mean the scale was too big or too small? We need real work, real effort with real results. But for them it is easier to buy, to sell, and then to switch the support towards Oracle. We have such integrators in the Russian Federation all the time. And happily, I have met with Anton. And I've been reading about him, about his company and vision. We've tried to cooperate. And he were, just taking words out of my mouth. And some sort of drive appeared between us. And I see that Anton has founded a huge company. He went through all of this. He understands this. He knows how to do it. But, we do not live in a perfect world. And he said to me, please, gather a team of developers, and I will help you to deal with the rest. I will help you to guide you through the business world. And he knows all the integrators, and when we were discussing different things with him, I was discovering marvelous things, how to place an order, how business goes, and it is very difficult for me. I'm a technician, I'm a technical guy, to understand all this, and together with him we started to build this big company. I have gathered a team of developers. And what was the aim behind, what was the rationale behind gathering the developers? A couple of days we have gathered in our office and we've said there is no need for us to catch up with the others. We need to formulate our goals, our mission, and our mission will be like, change the world, That's a big picture. And we are really ambitious. And of course, we will deal with the real world problems. And a lot of people approached me during this conference, and I told them the following. We have lots of clients, we are overwhelmed. And we need to choose manageable cases in order to show some success stories, in order to shake the IT community, so that people would go to us, so that small companies would emerge. So we will meet with 1C company in the near future, and I've been telling about this for a long time. So almost the whole Russian Federation works using MySQL, owing to 1C enterprise, but PostgreSQL is better than MySQL. And what is the version? The version they're using, it was compiled 7 years ago. And in this version, Postgres emulates MSQL. And we need to rewrite their software so that the software would benefit from all the innovations in progress. Like that, we will get rid of MySQL. We will have lots of small companies because, you know, they are installing their MySQL solutions 200,000 times per year. And we need to show the businesses. We need to send a message, and we are the general sponsor of this conference, and we have spent our money with a purpose, and people started to think about it. The minister was here, and he started to ponder over it, and CNews already made a post about this conference. You know, this media impact, we need this. Oracle also is interested in media impact. Before, we did not have a vendor who could have stood up for progress and who would form the opinion, who would form the public opinion, who will provide support. So this will be our role. For me, I'm better at developing. However, I truly believe that the business experience of my partner will be a good starting point. Of course, we will not run without moving forward. And we are hiring people from Oracle. And people from Oracle, they understand this. They're saying, okay, we know how Oracle works. We can retrain to acquire Postgres knowledge, but we like this wind of change. We like this drive. And Oracle is a black box. You know, you're writing procedures all day long. If you make one step to the right, if you make one step to the left, you're dead. For some people, it is routine, it is not interesting. But for some people, they like this new chance, they like this new opportunity to create something. In 1995, I embarked upon Postgres Way. I didn't even think back then that this will become my career. And I have read Stonebreaker's article about Postgres dated 1984, and this article has inspired me, and it still inspires me. And you know how many Postgres forks are there in the world? And this extensibility formulated by Stonebreaker is a never-ending source of inspiration for developers, for different DBMS creators. It poses lots of challenges. I like challenges, and my colleagues, they like challenges. We here in the Russian Federation, we yell about education. We say that we have bad education or good education. The opinion changes all the time. But some guys, they are interested in what they're doing. You know, my son writes PhD, his PhD. And of course, I can vouch for him, and he might work for Stormbreaker or for other companies. And he said to me the following: okay, Dad, I don't want lots of money. I want to have a mentor. I want to learn things from my mentor. You know, a young guy, he can do this because young guys, they have time for learning. And these are people we want. We have a great example, Alexander Karatkov. He was brought up in our company, and he's a major contributor in Postgres. And he required 3 years to make a career. Postgres is a huge company. Look at our mailing list, how many people we have there. Postgres is like a huge enterprise. And you start with bug fixes, and then you will become someone who will make bigger, significant projects. But to do so, you need to be talented, you need to be inspired, and you need to have, you know, the prerequisite specs. But Mr. Karatkov, he had me, he had Theodore, and he needed to understand how to make your voice heard, how to go through all the procedures, how to pass all the reviews. And codes of Postgres, they undergo significant reviews. Yeah, so the testing system is aimed at selecting the right people, because there are tons of people. Yes, you're being kicked in the butt a lot. Okay, I would like to ask you a question. So, how many people are involved in developing Postgres all around the world? You've mentioned 10,000 people, and Mark he knows the salaries, but I cannot count the heads. I know that we have more than 150,000 unique email addresses, but I don't know, maybe we have many more. It is very difficult for us to say how many people exactly are involved into Postgres development. So we are counting major contributors. We are counting these famous people. They have made a major contribution, and they are participating in the life of the community. They are giving keynotes at big conferences. Me, myself, my students, they have developed indexes. So my student works at Cambridge within Gaia project, and they are using his index. Can you imagine this? You know, in Oracle, you need to buy a special plugin, special extension. And in Postgres, it is already there, spatial searches. So if you want to work with spherical coordinates, so my 4-year student, and he has invented how a cube can be introduced into a sphere, and how then you can build a quad 3 on the basis of that, and then it entails very fast indexes which are now used in all the astronomical laboratories all around the world. And he is not considered a major contributor. He made this one-time achievement, and that's it. A lot of guys like that worked with me. But those who are working consistently, year by year, they are considered major contributors, and we have a special committee who does that. Postgres is a sort of self-organizing system. Okay, I understand it is an open source software. And I had recently a meeting with the Ministry of Communications, and they want to, they want to develop communities. They want to develop open source communities. And they want to have negotiations with the leader of the communities, and they want to understand, where is the button? What button I need to push to make it work for us? And he said to me, okay, you are a leader. Do you have a special button to control this community? No, I have no button. It is a self-organizing system, but without the community, there will be no market. And that is why one of the tasks of our company is to organize events like this one, to cooperate with the community. And I see the difference between Postgres at the stage when we were hackers. You know, we were working only online. We were communicating only in mail lists, and I were doing this free of charge. I've never seen back then Simon in real life. It was just for fun, and Postgres was developing. And then Postgres emerged in enterprise. Second quadrant has appeared. And we've introduced reviews, we've introduced release cycles, and we hired people for promotion. You know, when we launch a release, we have a special slogan for that. Now everything has changed. And Postgres, it is not as democratical as it was before, but it is a truly open DBMS. And this is, you know, the ad hoc pillar, and we did not contact GitHub. If you read the GitHub user agreement, and as the same as SourceForge, they can erase you without unilaterally. And this thing happened to SourceForge in 2008. SourceForge has closed down all the Syria and Iraq projects. And this was a shameful thing. And a lot of users abandoned SourceForge. I abandoned SourceForge back then. GitHub is hyped right now, but GitHub, it is a US entity. We have the same restrictions applied to US entities. Postgres does not belong to anyone. Postgres is governed by an international community. You cannot buy Postgres. You cannot sell Postgres. Your investment is protected. If you're using Postgres, no one will go to you and no one will say, okay, I'm Oracle, I have bought Progress over, You will never do that. Please don't mention Oracle, you will offend our friend. Oh, Oracle did a terrible thing to MySQL. So the users and the developers of MySQL, they have abandoned MySQL because lots of forks developed. And people don't understand what is Pergona, what is 6.5, what is 7.2, how does it function, and so on and so forth. You cannot understand what is it. But for Postgres, we have the one and only Postgres. It is there and it works. And I would like to give the floor to Alexander because you live in real world, and we are not working with Postgres. We are working only with MySQL. You know, we can talk with you later on about it in greater detail. So what is your opinion? What is your vision? Is it interesting for you or not? Technological independence as such is a multifaceted issue. So I will not talk, you know, on the name of people who develop security systems. I will talk about political issues, I will talk about defense issues, about critical infrastructure facilities, and the state has to make several decisions. And Igor has already brought you up to speed what was the beginning of MSOS, and I remember all these things because I worked with them before. Mark said that there are hardware platforms.
And there are some issues there, especially concerning the chip production and so on. Now, there are good manufacturers, good producers, of course, but we are closer to the communication world. And still the producers use foreign-made chips. And here, I think that without Mr. Nikiforov and the Ministry of Defense, it would be difficult to solve the issue. Speaking about the market, well, indeed, we are not aiming at killing Oracle. Oracle may just leave Russia at any moment. Well, it is unlikely to happen. A nuclear war may begin. There are many things that may happen. Well, let's not be pessimistic. Okay. What's your point of view? You are not using Postgres. Yes, we are closer to the information security. There is the issue of certification. I agree that the open source code is much more promising. And in terms of further support as well, yes, today Microsoft or Oracle are permitted, they may give source codes, but tomorrow they may refuse to give source codes. So what to do with them? At the previous session, Andrei, who has participated in our discussion, he has talked about Astra Linux and PostgreSQL used together for the special purpose operation systems. That's one of the ways to develop it. They didn't have any other vendor, and they started developing things themselves. Now the landscape may change, but all in all, so far we haven't used the word operation system. If we are speaking about independence, the operation system should also participate. Yes, indeed. Still, it's difficult for me to say, but we need to ask when, why, and how. There are some critical tasks. For example, tomorrow we may have an outage of telecommunication systems that will prevent us from launching a rocket. It will be a problem. And if Oracle doesn't provide support, that's what actually happened, then the organization may migrate to Postgres. The interpreter cannot hear the speaker as he is not using the mic. The speaker is not using the mic. They are publishing security doors for Oracle, for Postgres, and so on. And now Oracle issued a 2.9.4 release, but in any code there are some holes, there are some deficiencies, and there are special organizations that deal with that. Postgres is, of course, releasing some patches to close them. And of course, it may lead to different issues. There are some websites by which you can use the backdoor. The issue of support is indeed a very important one. What Oleg has mentioned is quite right. Postgres also has some holes. Yes, I mentioned that everyone has them. There are millions of users that identify such deficiencies in Oracle, but in Postgres it takes much more time. Why so? There are millions of people who are using Postgres. They also identify the defects at once. You all know that there are some undeclared parameters that often use support and so on. Speaking about holes in software, when the enemy can just turn you off or do some harm, I have been speaking with people in headquarters a lot. Part of everything is written in Russia. By Java, for example, and in the headquarters there are a lot of people who are former or actual Russian, Ukrainian or Belarusian colleagues, and they don't know anything about that. I cannot swear on what I'm saying, of course, but there have been no such cases when people were building something in. That's all I can say. What I wanted to say is that Java is working as an interpreter, and in terms of security, it cannot be considered as a serious security mechanism. It has nothing to do with Oracle, but it has all to do with the architecture of development. So there is no guarantee of reliable security mechanisms. I'm sorry, we have monopolized the discussion. We have our colleagues among the audience. If you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand. My name is Ivan Fedorov. I have a question regarding security. What happens if there is no support at a plant, for example? I know a lot about the work of Irkutsk aluminum plant. Do you know what will happen if the manufacturing ceases for one day? No one is speaking about outages. If there is a loophole, there are controllers there, and when I went there, they used Siemens controllers. Well, why are you using this equipment if it has loopholes? We have to protect them, but if there is no support, if no one can fix it, every day there is more and more probability who know about this loophole. And if the manufacturing ceases, they will just have to start the production from scratch, because aluminium will become solid, it will become cold, and you will have to restart the whole manufacturing process. I see. Well, I guess that in such a case, problems may happen with any types of security, of software, or hardware. Yesterday, there was a forum that mostly focused on security and technological process security. We have half an hour left. I would like the participants of the roundtable to speak a little bit about training specialists. It is a topic that is of huge importance. Oleg has already mentioned that. And then we are going to have a Q&A session. Oleg, sorry for interrupting. You have started speaking about training specialists because we need to breed them. Unfortunately, we have no database school in Russia. I only know Sergei Kuznetsov, of course, but it's not a school. A school is when there are students, when there is a curriculum, and so on. But we also need a result. In Stanford, for example, Hector Garcia Molina, he trained a lot of people who later made Google. Unfortunately, we don't have such a school. I felt it myself. When I started to work with Postgres, as I have been involved in science for most of my life, I have started to study the algorithm according to a book. We only have Sergei Kuznetsov's book on databases in Russia. The other books are translated books. There are quite a lot of Russian authors, but there is the issue of quality. And he has a specific monography. It is not for students. Yes, indeed. So the question is very serious. And we even tried to organize a course of conferences in the physics university. For half a year we did that, but the result was not very interesting because these were master's degree students. It was the first students who were doing masters in this physics university, and they were a bit strange, and there was no result. Yes, before we had a different program at universities. It was called specialty. People studied for 5 years and they became specialists. And now all universities are migrating to bachelor's and master's degree systems. And therefore, they basically had to take students who had studied for 4 years and use a master's degree curriculum in teaching them. So it's an issue of our education system. Okay, but what do we need to do? What are your ideas? My ideas are very simple. For example, why did I go to the public funds? I have positive experience in cooperating with them. Previously, I got grants from public foundations. It was not a huge money, but I could work, I could send students to conferences, and we did a lot of work with the support of these grants. This is not just money that is given. This is money that you have to use to write articles, to work, and so on. You are accountable. And now the situation is different. I also went to the Foundation of Developing Internet Initiatives. I tried to speak to people. People were looking at me and told me that they are doing a different thing. And I was trying to explain that I need an expert commission that would allocate money to young scientists, to those who want to make a contribution to open source. For example, as Google does a lot. You know that each summer they allocate $5,000 to a student who does a contribution to an open source project. And these projects are reviewed and so on. Postgres is a Google-supported project. And I made 2 students make a contribution, and one of them remained in Postgres. Alexander also sent 2 students of the physics university who made such a contribution. What I liked about Google is that it revealed our problem. Actually, there are very few students and postgraduate students who are compatible with the international coding rules. You know, our students may sit down, write a code and become #1 in the company. But when you are working with a huge project such as Postgres, they will have some requirements, and the person has to be compatible with these requirements. The requirements are regarding margins, comments, proposals, and so on. You also need to speak good technical English, and you have to tolerate criticism and defend your point of view. So this is a process that is not very characteristic of our programmers.
Yes, it is the same problem. We're still lacking that school of coding, and we've managed to get some students through. And Alexander has written an article at habrahabr.ru website, and people started to discuss it. But no one contacted us. You know, you can boast like to say, "Yeah, I'm a cool programmer," but it is another thing to publish your code and to see it being judged. And we need to do the same thing as Google did. You know, we can allocate this money. Okay, right now we're talking about the role of the state. Yes, education is the role of the state, and companies, they are already doing this. If they have means, they are launching educational programs. Yeah, please, I beg your pardon, but I'm also involved in educational programs. My masters, they were more adequate students. We had students from physics university and from economy and statistics university. The guys were adequate, they were interested in this, and they knew that they will continue to work in this area of business, and whom they will become. It is interesting for me what will be their profession. I give them a course on databases, but I was talking about developers. But in order to be a good developer, you need to understand the basics, you need to understand the architecture, the functions. And we have a second area of business, and we are doing this as a company, and we are organizing yearly Oracle events, and people from all around the country are attending these events, these shows. And first of all, we organized quite simplistic contests, but then we introduced a more sophisticated contests, and everything comes down to enthusiasts. We need people, we need benefactors, we need funding, and you know, they are promised a lot of things. They are promised that they will be employed by a huge international company, and it is great that right now ELEG will be able to employ these beautiful and handsome, smart guys. And in commercial companies we see disruption. A contest was organized, the winners were established, and then there are no vacancies. But there are vacancies, these bright guys are already employed by someone else. We need to streamline this process. And in some universities are teaching databases, and Mr. Kuznetsov's annual conference, it was a fantastic event. Unfortunately, it was discontinued, and this conference gathered people all across the board from different companies, and it generated a great opinion and experience exchange. It generated lots of news, and it brought together developers and clients. So the new Russian company is emerging, this databases-oriented company, and I think it would be great if our state would provide them assistance. And I think that this new company might organize contests, might organize shows, might help young guys to be employed by well-known companies, and they might even organize training courses. Because we have our own training course, I have compiled this training course, and everything comes down to the enthusiasm, but enthusiasm alone will not help us to achieve a lot of things. So I like the system which was introduced by the Physical and Technical University, and some universities are as well playing this system. Senior students, when they are preparing their diplomas, their theses, they have to prepare their diplomas within a certain commercial company. Yeah, and I graduated from Physics and Technical University myself, and then two other universities wanted to implement this program, and this program is still alive. So when you're working within a commercial entity, when you're developing your diplomas there, it is already a full-fledged commercial effort. And this commercial effort can be propagated and implemented in this commercial company. And open source companies, they can cooperate in this way with different universities. And we are cooperating with Moscow State University, we're cooperating with the Higher School of Economics, and our specialists are working with these senior students. And when students take part in open projects, they have not only a possibility to expand their technical skills, but they are also learning social skills. They learn how to cooperate with the community. They know how to act correctly, how to collaborate. They learn the basics of cooperation. Okay, Lenit. Lenit is a company which is active if we are talking about bringing new blood into the profession. So we have several centers which were opened all over the Russian Federation, and I'm directly managing that, and we have a partnership with Amur entity university. And guys from this university, they are working with us, they are completing their diplomas together with us. Before, I worked with an American company, and this company has lots of links with the Moscow Physical and Technical University, and I'm trying to preach the same philosophy in my company. I think it's a good school of life for new blood, for young developers, and this will give them a great springboard. So when they leave the school, they know that they are already employed. So there are two main streams. So one main stream, the federal, the state support, the state assistance, and another mainstream businesses which are bringing up new blood, which are trying to find bright students, and then they are hiring these bright students. So there are two mainstreams, okay? And Yandex, so let alone Yandex, they are doing a great job in this respect. Commercial companies, they have no time. They have no time to teach people when they are writing their diplomas. But Yandex does. Yandex does. Yes, Yandex they do. And as far as universities are concerned, teachers and trainers, they are not interested in doing so because they have low salaries. Because they will lose these bright students, they want them to stay at the university. And I need that Oracle and other, IT behemoth, they need to teach databases, and they might offer certificates for young graduates. Yes, we have academic courses. Some companies have more courses, some companies have less courses. We're giving lectures, we're giving materials, we're providing software, but everything boils down to people. I cannot send an employee to give a lecture because it is not his or her job. I'm doing it myself on a voluntary basis. And we had one guy, he was an enthusiast, and he was really, all in this process, and it was developing steadily, but now he has left, and this process is suspended. And then in the higher school of economics, they have a chair, they are giving courses on databases, and we need enthusiasts, we need, trend breakers, we need the drivers for the IT community. But we need to understand what courses are about. If you are hearing, well-known things about databases, it is one thing. But if you are hearing about the latest news, if I'm telling them about cloud computing, they have tons of questions. If I'm telling them about big data, big data is in the hype. But if I'm talking about SQL, they are not interested. Those who will work in SQL, yes, they listen, but we have different people attending these courses. So basically the thing is, when students go through training, we want them to be at a level suitable in the industry. The universities shall be interested in teaching students, and we need universities to be interested in teaching students who will be able to work in big companies. And if teachers and trainers would have normal salaries, they would be more interested. And I'm ready to provide a comment. So we need to have this synergy. We need to teach people for the community. Lots of graduates are working in different companies, and they are not pure Postgres developers, but they are Postgres users. They are writing applied software, and I would like to talk about our champions in coding. And Leonid has a cooperation with the St. Petersburg University, and Mr. Terehov there has prepared 3 teams which have won the World Cup in coding. And I don't understand why you are not hiring these guys afterwards. So I would like to give the floor to our colleague. My name is Alexander Kastis Company. And as about teaching, but I would like to talk about another thing, about technological independence of the Russian Federation. And I would like to learn your opinion about what is to happen in the Russian Federation, so that you would be able to say Russia is a technologically independent country. This is my question number 1. But are there any technologically independent countries? For instance, there are Western countries which are using Oracle. Are they technically independent or not? Is it a goal in itself, or these are just words which can be interpreted differently? And our panelists, they represent different areas of business. Some represent vendors, some represent universities, academia, some represent vendors. So what is for you technological independency and technological independency of Russia as such? We are talking right now only about IT, you mean? But we can talk about football as well. I understand. There are different products. Let's talk about IT stack, the whole IT stack. In my opinion, technological independence is the presence of people who are competent enough to develop competitive products. But this is a time-consuming process. So technological independency is a set of technologies which are based on SQL, PostgreSQL, or our own in-house products. So the big picture is that the market is politically independent, and the market is a self-organizing system. If we look at the recent developments, we see that the market is rather being led astray by the politicians, and people started to talk about political and technological independence of the Russian Federation, but they are mixing up unmixable things. Sorry, the question is off the mic. Unfortunately, I cannot interpret it. Pension fund, banks, and it will be enough. It will be enough to achieve technological independence. So you are key people within your companies, so you are forming the big picture. So what is your opinion? Okay, if we are looking at the big picture, so hardware first, software second, people third, and culture of use of the three above. There are four components of technological independence. So my answer will be as follows. Technological independence is the ability of a country to ensure and to maintain key facilities if the borders are closed and if nothing comes from abroad. It doesn't mean that we need to build local Oracle, local Microsoft. It doesn't need that we need millions of developers. So if all the borders are closed, imagine this. The worst case scenario, we don't want to live in such an environment. But technological independence is when you survive when all the borders are closed. And so I mentioned the triad: source code, tools, and guys who can figure out the two above aforementioned components. And we need to maintain and support local users. There is no need for us to build and to compile and to develop the same systems from scratch. So we need to tweak functionality, we need to provide support for local users. So this makes up for me the technological independence. I don't like the collocation technological independence. We have one technologically independent country, the North Korea. I don't know who is the winner in their stead. There is no need to discuss technological independence. We need to have a plan B if there is an emergency. But until this emergency arises, there is no need for us to go into the extremes. We need to use the best software. We need to use the software which is up to date. However, on parallel, we need to develop similar projects. We need to have tools, technologies in order to quickly respond. We need to have migration plans, independent tools. Maybe we will never use these tools. And thank God if this will be like that. God willing, you know, but we need to have a plan B in case of emergency. I think that first thing is people. If we have no people, we can never talk about any technological independence. So if we need people, we are going back to the discussion about training and about universities. The situation is quite hard today. And let's talk about this plan B. In order to have the right plan B, you need to evaluate all the risks, including external risks. We need to understand what we might lose if the worst-case scenario happens. But we will not go back to the USSR. We will not have a closed loop. We will not manufacture everything in the Russian Federation. You know, these are times which are long gone. Okay, my opinion. So I try to imagine a fully independent country. I think that the world today is closely intertwined. Technologies are intertwined. People are intertwined. And I'm struggling with imagining an independent country. I cannot say that the United States of America are a fully independent country. They are not. It will be too expensive to be independent. If everyone starts to invent the wheel, it will bring tremendous costs. It will break all the links. And if we will all concentrate on this task, I think that the resources of our Mother Earth will be depleted. They will be depleted, they will be fully depleted. And I hope that the humanity will understand what is the price of being independent and politicians will cease to use such political tricks in order to push on different countries. Imagine that all the countries all around the world will invent the wheel. We have companies in the Russian Federation which are basically inventing the wheel. They are copying of functions. Rosatom, a Russian nuclear agency, they want to create an operating system. They want to create their own DBMS. And I've invented them to my office, but they failed to attend the meeting. So if I'm reading an article about a DBMS and they do not mention me, Oleg Bartenov, I think that this article is not a correct one. And Russian Nuclear Federal Agency, they want to create a national DBMS, and they are saying that they are making a Postgres national DBMS. I do not trust them. I do not trust them because they've never been to my office, they've never been to my colleagues' offices. And during one of the conferences, I even managed to get through all these barriers, and they promised to attend the meeting, but they failed to do so. So, you know, when each company creates a university, when each company creates its own school, why there is a need to do so? If we have good federal universities, there is no need for Leonid to create its own university. You know, all companies, they are starting to breed these entities.
I just wanted to say that if big companies do their universities, it would be good, because all the companies are interested in that. If Yandex and other big companies have their universities, that will ensure higher quality levels. But today, our actual universities are not interested in development. They are interested in having people for 5 years sitting there behind the desk and paying for that. And when I'm speaking to graduates, they do not know even the theory. Of course, they don't have experience, but also they cannot answer even simple questions. And I know mathematics better than these people, although I didn't graduate from a technical university. Well, I wouldn't say that all universities are like that. Actually, I wanted to say that I fully agree with Oleg. Of course, isolationism is not something we should aspire to. But it's like with nuclear weapons. We should be ready to technological independence, to be autonomous. We need to have a plan B. We need to have nuclear missiles, but we don't need to use them. Okay, I also have a comment. We didn't speak about technological independence in general. We are speaking about raising technological independence. Of course, we cannot say that 2% of the world's people, 2% of the world's economy can isolate themselves. We just need to raise our technological independence. It means that within our country we can do something that we have to purchase now. That's what we are speaking about. That's my vision of technological independence, to do inside more that we have to purchase now. It will create jobs, it will lower our dependency. That's how I see it. That's how I see raising technological independence. It's not about black and white. Igor, do you want to add something? I would just like to highlight one point that hasn't been mentioned. I am also for multipolarity and for freedom of choice. I understand that Mark is afraid that there will be a directive to use only open source. No, I'm not promoting that. When the customer has different classes of requirements, what I like to quote is that people sometimes want something, but they don't have enough money to pay for that. And having only giants is not a solution. Having only open source is not a solution. We need to have freedom of choice and avoid pressure from both sides. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Thanks a lot, dear friends, for being attentive listeners. Thank you. That's it. I guess we are going to have a buffet out there.
Сейчас банкет.